All right, folks, I'd like you to bring your focus and attention up to the stage. We're about to begin our panel, our panel discussion. So let me introduce the moderator. Let me introduce the moderator, who's going to be really eliciting all this great insight for all of you today, this afternoon. Thanks for being at this session. So our panel moderator is the owner and chief communicator at Toshida Communications. She spent 15 years working in all aspects of corporate communications before starting her own communications consultancy, Toshida Communications. She has supported some of the biggest organizations in some of the most highly regulated industries, but today, she and her team focus on helping mid-sized companies clearly communicate to those who matter most to their success, so they can do more in the world. Please put your hands together and welcome Steph Toshida, everyone.
Hi, everybody. So glad you're here. I am excited to announce our distinguished panelists today. But before I do, I always feel like the first rule of good communication is to know your audience. So what I want to do is just get a quick old-fashioned show of hands. Who's in the room? Has anyone in the room also scaled a fractional business like we have? Because I'd love to involve you and ask for your input throughout this. Perfect. We're a small but mighty panel, so getting your feedback and input throughout this will be super helpful. Fantastic. Okay, cool. Well, we're going to start off by having Kristen and Carol introduce themselves as well. So both of you, could you just share a little bit about your business and how you have scaled it so far?
So Kristen Nordling, Lakeside HR Group, and we are a fractional HR consulting and recruiting organization. Louder from the back. Can we get the volume up? Or I'll just talk louder. Sorry. We'll figure this out. So we are a fractional HR consulting and recruiting organization, and I founded the company in October of 2021. Started with just myself, and quickly learned that I needed people to grow this business, and I knew I wanted this to be a growth organization, so took a chance on an intern, and that intern is still with me now, a part-time employee, but she really helped me realize that I could scale this with having the right people in the right seats. So for me now, I'm at a team of 8. That includes a consultant and as well as a couple other fractional resources too supporting me.
Hi, my name is Carol Fraser. My company is C4 Talent. This is my 4th round on building my own business. Incorporated in July of 2021, and similarly started off on my own. It's crazy that you have 2 HR people because it's funny. We're very focused on growth. So started off by myself, and then very quickly signed a very large client and had to bring on a full-time person, as well as, hold on, it's just my kids, as well as an intern and 1 tech person and 1 community manager. So we are now a team of 4, and my son is now joining us as another intern. You got to get these young kids to do all your social media for you. They know how to do it faster than any of us. So that's where I am today in a relatively short period of time.
You'll have to let me know how it goes with your son, because my son is begging to work with me, and I'm like, nope, not yet. You got to get more experience, so you'll have to let me know how that goes.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll participate a bit as a panelist, too, since we're a small group today. So I've been in business about 4 years, and we have 10 1099s. So I've been really nervous about going the W-2 route, and I think that's something I'm going to have to figure out at some point. I would love to pick your brains about that. But so far, I've had sort of some contract support, about 10 folks. I also have made the mistake, just in terms of intention and learnings, I made the mistake of keeping more people less busy earlier in my time, if you know what I mean. I had up to 20 people at one point who didn't have a lot of vested interest in my business at all, if we're being very honest, right? And that was just kind of a function of me running around like a chicken with my head cut off as my business was growing and not being intentional and not being super smart about how I did that. So I've kind of reduced that down to fewer people who have more eggs in my basket, if you will. And yeah, it's not the dedication of an employee, but I've definitely seen that dedication and that sort of investment kind of ratchet up and feel a lot better to me. So that's just kind of maybe an interesting note from a staff.
Yeah, and I think, to add on to that, I, for the last 2 years, have been scaling when I felt stretched. So when I felt like I was doing too much, there was too much going on, felt stretched, the team was stretched, and that's not necessarily a good thing. And I've now realized that I have to be more proactive, and the work will come. It's just a matter of making sure I've got, again, the resources to support that work. It's scary because it's an investment, but at the same time, knowing that I've got the people that have the skills, that's going to be extremely important. So I'm refocusing going into 2024 as scaling more intentionally, but yet not, and more proactively.
So one thing I'd love to ask you both is, you've been in business several years. Is there a situation where what you've created today, what it looks like today, is not what you initially set out to create? And what would that look like? Kind of what did you set out to do, and what does it look like today? And a little bit about how that evolved.
Definitely. It is iterative pretty much every quarter. But when I originally set out in July 2021, I was focusing, actually leaning more into my coaching practice with an occasional fractional client, and it has flipped. So now I have more fractional clients, and I'm only doing one-on-one coaching now. So I have had to move that needle and move away from doing biz dev to individuals to doing biz dev to companies, and had to shift my whole marketing campaign. And basically I started and did a bunch of investing into one kind of way with just a little bit of marketing for fractional, and then now I'm completely shifted to the other side, which is again the reason why I hire 20-somethings. They work very fast.
Yes. And for me, yes, I've gone through a couple iterations, and I had I thought it was going to be focused primarily on recruiting. I had started with my coaching certification. I thought I was going to be doing more coaching and recruiting. And I realized that the HR consulting piece was one area that there was just such a demand for small businesses. And my clients are small businesses, typically under that 50 million. They typically don't have an HR department. And so sometimes we're a phone a friend. And I actually had debated it actually in the last 6 months, or 6 months ago, about shutting down that practice and just focusing on recruiting. And when I really took a step back, I realized we are a full service HR partner, and we'd be doing our clients and ourselves a disservice by shutting down that practice.
Yeah. And for me, I feel like I'm leading this panel probably because I'm one of the most unintentional people in terms of how I've stumbled into this. I mean, that's just the way I've done it. So when I started out 4 years ago, I was just kind of going to be a freelancer, just do communications. And I did that for about 2 years. That was about all I could handle during COVID, and we moved and homeschooling and all the things, right? And that level of risk was all I could tolerate too. So for those of you who are in corporate still, who are thinking about jumping, there were a lot of reasons I couldn't just jump really willy-nilly. I'm the main breadwinner in our family, and I'm also a really risk-averse person. So what that looked like for me was, I'm going to go from Friday being a W-2 at a big corporation to Monday being a 1099, really doing the same thing, kind of having a long-term contract. Didn't light my heart on fire, but that was about as much risk as I could take back then. So I just share that to say that was a step forward for me. I was out on my own in many ways, and it isn't where I am at today. It took me kind of a long time to realize, I can figure out who I want to serve, and it's not this big corporation. I can start to take some risks. I can start to go out on my own and generate some business and do some of those kinds of activities that honestly take a whole lot of time, and I just wasn't mentally there when I started. So where I'm at is completely different than today too. I didn't dream of having a team. I didn't dream of all these things. And again, I just want to share that to say it can look very different. If you're contemplating something, just try stuff and see what happens, and it will evolve. It should evolve, and that's okay. You don't have to have all the answers when you're thinking about making a jump.
I had a conversation yesterday with somebody, and I made the comment that every fractional business can be different, and it does not have to have a team. It can be just you. It can be you can be the subject matter expert. You have control over that, and I think last night's panel as well kind of hit to that too. It's what you want it to be. And I wanted this to be a growth business. I wanted to have a team. I did want to, either sell it someday or have my son, who keeps begging to work with me, which I think he'll regret someday, by the way. But, he could take it over someday. So it was really important to me when I started this that I was very clear and intentional about this was a growth business.
Super smart. Carol, how did you think about that when you were approaching kind of lifestyle versus growth business?
So when I had my first consultancy, it was 2000 to 2014, and it was very successful. And I had only 1099ers at the time, but I had a dozen of them. And we were rocking and a-rolling, and we were just having a great time. So I knew I wanted this time around to that's where my bar is. So it didn't get there right away, right? It took time. And so my bar is still there. I want this to ultimately be something that is self-sustainable. That my first employee is someone who was an HR coordinator, so a junior person, but was so hungry. And when I had worked with her as a W-2 CHRO, I asked my employees, ultimately, what do you want to be? She's like, I want your job. And I'm like, you're my successor. So I immediately, when I signed that huge client, I said, hey, I think it's time for you to quit your job. I think you need to come work for me. So I've already got my successor that I will be mentoring for the next 5-10 years so that the business does keep going. And so she's actually gone. I've sent her to different masterminds so that she isn't just thinking about how to grow the business my way, but rather what else can you bring in as different ideas. And now she's really leaning into the marketing side of the business because she recognizes, and she's an introvert. Where's my introverts? Who absolutely hates talking in front of people, but she's learning that biz dev and marketing and all this stuff requires you to get in front of people. So I really believe that it's going to scale well beyond me, given the fact that I now have someone from that next generation who thinks like the new entrepreneurs of small businesses are going to think. So we're really focusing on not only your typical people our age who are small business owners, but I'm really pushing her to find those small business owners who are under 40, who relate to her, that help to grow the business for a sustainable period of time, because they're just starting their careers.
That's amazing. I admire so much the intention both of you have described. Yeah, go ahead. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's the $1 million question. So for those who couldn't hear, how much time are we working on the business versus in the business?
So I would say it's flipping more to on the business for me. For the first 2 years, it was definitely in the business. And I've started to see that pivot point in the last 2-3 months, because now my team is humming. And now what I'll do is show up at the important meetings with the client. So if I have a weekly meeting with the client as a check-in, and that is one thing that I think I'm going to be talking about in a different panel, which is every time I am in front of the client, I am re-interviewing for my contract. So it's important that the person who's most confident, that has the most knowledge, gets in front of the client and just says, how's it going? What's going on? Here's what we worked on. Do you like our priorities? And I get there once a week in front of my clients, and the rest of the time I'm in the background supporting. And so if there's a gap in knowledge, I am tapped on the shoulder, and we all work in my home, so I'm always, tap, tap, can you get on the call? So I'll get on the call and answer the question. So I'm flipping it right now so it took me about 2 years to really not be in the business, and you have to hire at least some sort of 1099ers, go to Upwork, find your web guy in Nigeria, find your community manager in the Philippines, get whatever you need to for the prices that you can afford so that you can scale your business and get out of doing and focus more on strategy.
It's my 2024 goal. I would say on the recruiting side, I'm not in the business as much. I am doing the business development for it. The consulting side, it's probably I feel good about the fact that I've reduced it to about 30 to 40%, and I've now started to find outsourced providers to help me with IT, marketing. From a PEO perspective, hopefully soon as well. So there are definitely, ways that I can get out of being in the business too.
Yeah, and I'm probably 50-50. I've had times where I'm 100% out of the business, working on it, and I love that. And I've had times I've had to kind of dive back in for any number of reasons. And then it makes it that much harder to keep your foot on the gas of all the on the business stuff, and it really drives me crazy. So it's like the constant challenge, and I would say it's probably the thing I talk most with folks like us about, like, how are you balancing that? For the three of you who raised your hand who have done some scaling work, what would you say your ratio is? I'd love to hear. And is that okay? Yeah. Go ahead, John.
Is this working? Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have questions, I have a microphone, so I'll bring it to you so we can all hear. Yep.
Thanks, John.
I knew there would be questions. Plus, I got to get my steps in.
Love it.
Thanks. Well, so I work with a large law firm. So I'm the fractional, I'm the, like you said, the space we should be playing in, seat at the table, advisor. I try to do as little legal work as possible because I got people that can do that, right? But that's how my model's worked and how we've been able to leverage it. I do see in Cincinnati, the market I'm with, that certain, like fractional CFOs or fractional CHROs or even CIOs are connecting with accounting firms. And so accounting firms are fine. They got to find a way to distinguish themselves because they're just tax and audit, and they're becoming accounting plus. So then what happens is they can bring you in with their clients to really get sticky,